In a generation scrambling for guidance and direction, the church should be that beacon of light, signaling weary passerbyers that there is hope and assurance here, a place of unapologetic truth. But that's not what we're seeing from the church, especially the prominent churches. We're not seeing the church provide guidance to a lost and fledgling world. We're actually seeing the church take inspiration from the world.
Look at your neighbor and say, walk it out. They trying to act like they don't know what you're referring to. Look at them and tell them, walk it out.
Something ain't right.
Now, I'm aware that this is an old clip in our day and age because stuff is old in like 2 days. I'm aware of that. But I believe that the effects of this service and the influence of this pastor demands another perspective. As outrageous as this church service was, people will continue to flock to churches like that because the world has become consumer driven and the church has followed suit. You see, the average person isn't looking for churches with sound doctrine and preaching. Those people make up the majority of the lost community. They're looking for a church that will provide entertainment. But why is that? Well, think about it. Why do people love amusement parks? Because it's mindless entertainment. You don't have to think. It's fun with zero demands. So a lot of churches have designed their church services to be fun. If it isn't fun, people won't come. Obviously, however, not all churches fit in this category. There are churches who are sound and they provide context and bring people in. But for the most part, the churches who are going this direction are doing something very dangerous. They're playing with people's souls by conditioning them to be lukewarm. What's wrong with being a lukewarm Christian? Let me go to the Bible and show you. Revelation 3 verse 15 says, I know your works. You are neither cold nor hot. Would that you would either cold or hot. So, because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. You can't be both. You can't be in the middle. You can't be in the club or trying to make the church the club. Either go to the club and be worldly or come to church and act like you got some sense.
Welcome back to the channel. So you see the information on the screen, so you know what I'm about. So let's get into it. I think right now we're starting to see a huge, kind of change. I don't even really want to call it a divide. I want to call it a change when it boils down to the generational Black community in America. And while I know that this gentleman from By the Book Ministries, in fact, I found his information to be pretty interesting, and I'll try to remember to put you a link in the description if you want to check out that entire video. But I found a lot of this, interesting because I do think what we're starting to see is we're starting to see kind of a change. But what he's saying, I agree with, but I don't really think that that is the root cause. Okay. And the root cause, as crazy as it sounds, I believe lines up a little bit more with what we talk about on this channel. And that's why I decided, to go into this today. One of the things that is always at the core of everything, my belief, is the family. The family creates a situation where you actually bring up really strong children, and then those children are actually able to be prepared, for the world. And I've talked a lot about how even children that are truly prepared, and I've talked a little bit about how children, when they come from really great environments, they're actually able to leapfrog over children that don't quite come from good environments. And when I'm saying good here, I'm not saying without challenge. In fact, I think that's one of the problems, that I see in a lot of suburban households is that they're protecting their children too much. It is really the equivalent of taking a plant, and bringing it in the house and never allowing the wind or the sun, to move upon it. Back in the day, I had a garden because y'all know how I feel about food. So I've always, had a garden. Right now, I'm in a situation where I can't have one. But at one time, I got so disappointed with the quality of plants that I actually decided I was going to grow my plants from seed. And I did not do a lot of research on understanding how to do this properly. So what I did was, I bought all these little teeny tiny cups, they're about that big. And, I put soil in them, and I put like 1 or 2 seeds in them. And, I got my blue light, and it looked like I was growing marijuana, in my closet. Because all of this was in a closet, right? And I just knew I had done a good job, right? And when I planted these plants outside, because they look really, really good, within 2 or 3 days, they were all dead. And I did not know what I did wrong. And so now I'm all on Google and all this other kind of stuff trying to find out what I did wrong. And what I did wrong was I did not challenge the plant. I allowed the plant to grow without challenge. So how do you do this? Like, Jay, how in the world do you do this? Well, what you do for the plants is you actually have to bring a fan into the room, and then you have to turn the fan on like medium, and you have to blow air over the plants. And this simulates wind, right? And then you even have to change the temperature and do little other small things so that when you plant the plant, it is not so accustomed to always having water, to always having perfect sun, to always being able to do whatever it is it wants to do. So what we see that even with plants, they have to be challenged in order to live. And when we say live here, we're not saying not die, we're saying to get the best out of this life. One of the issues, like I said, when you're starting to deal with family, and I think a lot of men and women are starting to recognize this, especially in the generational Black community, is that because we've been a matriarchy for so long, our men are not strong. And our women, even though they walk in strength, they're not walking really where they should be. And it's causing this problem within their minds as to say, okay, what should I really be feeling? What should I really be doing? And as we start to see, especially when we start talking about the church and we talk about all the single women in church, despite these single women having children, right? And as we start to see this, and even as I'm starting to look, and because all these things are coming in my feed, what I'm starting to notice is that there's a trend here. So one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm going to be showing you guys some things right now on the screen dealing with Pastor John Gray. And again, before I get too deep into this, I really don't like to get in, to what I call the gossip that is going on when it comes to, talking about, pastors and different things like that, right? And the main reason why I'm showing you all this is because Pastor Gray, just like, honestly, William Murphy, both of them, if you really watch them and you watch their movements, you watch the way that they talk, they're actually a little effeminate in the way that they move, in the way that they groove. In fact, one of the main reasons why one particular dating influencer actually blew up was because he actually talked to Pastor Gray about the issues that he was having with his wife. And that was such a big controversy that it actually, helped this one particular dating influencer a while back blow up, even though, again, the same issue that happened in Gray was the same that was happening in that influencer. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because remember what we're talking about when we deal with the matriarchy. See, when you start to look at things like the Nation of Islam, and even when you think about them from an institutional place, when we consider them, and even when we consider the Roman Catholic Church, all right, in general, throughout history, what you see logic. You see that these services are filled with logic. It is men, in front of a congregation, and they're kind of going through what they, believe and trying to teach these people that are in front of them. You don't see it as much in your mind as the people getting excited, getting, happy, as people say, and you really don't see that. Instead, you see people listening intently to try to understand what, this person in front of them is talking about. Just like the guy at, By the Book Ministries, I do feel like a lot of people are leaning into this entertainment aspect. But we have to ask ourselves, what really is that? Why are people leaning into that? And the answer really is simple. The concept of fun, the concept of having a good time, all those concepts lead you into emotion, right? Okay, and when we start to talk about emotion, okay, again, is emotion masculine or is it feminine? Think about this. We consider logic to be masculine, and we consider emotion to be feminine. Who runs the black community? Women. Women are more in touch with their emotions. Therefore, they're going to get more out of someone who stirs up their emotions than they are with someone who brings logic. Does this make sense now? Okay. And so what we're dealing with is we're dealing with a situation of the concept of the broken world. And I believe that is why you have a new set of Christians that are rising up. And they're basically saying, hold on, I don't know if we're doing this the right way, because the Bible that I'm reading and the way you're describing the Bible is two totally different things. And you have to understand, I am not necessarily against any one of these pastors directly. I don't know them enough. And I have not watched them enough. I have not been in their congregation. I've not watched enough videos on them, to sit around and form an opinion and try to demonize them, on a world platform. However, what I do see in them, okay, is I see a lot of feminine nature. And I see a lot of cheating, because Pastor Gray has been caught cheating on his wife multiple times. William Murphy was actually under Bishop Eddie L. Long when I used to go to New Birth way back in the day before, the New Birth scandal, with Bishop Eddie L. Long. And even then, William Murphy was cheating on his wife. I know this because Bishop actually said it, in front of the entire congregation. So we're dealing with these very feminine men, and we've put them at a place of power. And I believe that there's a problem with them understanding that place of power. Now, you have to realize, again, I understand that we will always have men that walk a little bit more in their emotion. I know we'll always have men that can stir people up and do different things like that. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not saying that those people are bad, because then I would have to say every comedian is bad and every actor is bad. No, and even writers. And remember, I am a writer. So that's not what I'm saying. My point here is that there is a balance to it. And there's a reason, I believe, why these particular men tend to, come to the top of the Christian church food chain. And a lot of it is because there's a lot of women that are encouraging it, because this is a better way for them to learn. But as they learn this way, a lot of men do not learn well this way. And the main point of this, especially when it comes to marriage, is that what we see in these men is that these are the very men that are not faithful to their wives. See, it's like I try to explain to you all, especially for the women, because I think this is something for the women they have to kind of wrap their mind around. I think most of the guys already that are watching have already wrapped their mind around this. But this is what I try to explain. Life is like a war. It is like a war. And imagine yourself in a battle. Imagine yourself in a battle, and there's guns, bullets flying back and forth and all this other kind of stuff. And I know I'm not talking about some of y'all because y'all got that in y'all neighborhood. But, on the real, imagine a real war, something like you've seen on TV. And now a man shows up, ladies, in your life. And he pops up in the door. You know, you're in there all by yourself in this room. You're hoping and praying that the army's going to come or the Marines are going to come and they're going to save you. And all of a sudden, boom, boom, you know, the door pops open, a Marine shows up. Right? At that moment, do you want him cracking jokes? At that moment, do you want him playing around? Or is it at that moment you want him to be extremely serious, extremely focused, give you direct instructions, and tell you what you need to do in order for you to get out of there with your life? And see, this is one of those things that I'm always talking about. See, men that are walking in their masculinity, that are walking in their purpose, they tend to be a lot more stoic. They tend to be a lot more logical. They tend to be a little bit more purpose driven. These men aren't quite as fun. They aren't quite as exciting. But they will literally save your life. They will literally get you on the path, okay, to save you. Because the enemy is throwing darts and bullets and bombs at all moments. And when you're dealing with men that just want to have fun, that just want to play, and I'm not saying that they can never do these things, all right? Because you don't want a man that can't have fun, can't watch a TV show or anything like that, because we've also seen the results of that as well. You know, where men are so stoic that, you know, it's like you feel like you're, you know, literally, in prison, because those men make you feel like you're in prison. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to find that balanced man that is walking so much in his masculinity that he will protect you. And I've noticed that when men are at war and when they see the world almost as this war zone, these men don't have time to cheat. They're not moving and grooving in a place of cheating. They're moving and grooving in a place that I am going to survive this. I am going to make a difference. I am going to do what I need to do. And these men, it's much more difficult for them to cheat. Not saying that they can't, but it's much more difficult for them because they see the world differently. And that's one of the things I'm trying to get you all to kind of see this morning, because I know this is a difficult one. This is a difficult thing for a lot of people to grasp, because see, it's easy to take people like, William Murphy and, Pastor John Gray and just throw them away. And then there's other pastors out here, that are kind of young. I just kind of did somebody the other day, and they're just kind of young and immature. Right. But the issue of it is, why are they going through such great lengths, to try to get your emotions stirred up? And remember, that's what I'm always saying with women, like for guys that are trying to date women, you have to stir her emotions. If you can't stir a woman's emotions, you're never going to have a woman. Because that's really how women attach. They attach via their emotions. So it is better for you, as crazy as it sounds, it is better for a man, if he is in a room and there's a woman that he's interested in, it is better for you to literally walk over to her and trip and fall on your face, right? And then jump up with a big smile, than it is for you to kind of just come over to her and in a monotone be like, "Hey, how you doing? My name's Jay. And I thought, you was kind of nice and pretty, so I came over." That doesn't work, because it doesn't stir the woman's emotions. And it's the emotions, like I say, that she's locking in on. So again, why is this happening in the church? Well, it's happening in the church because the men have abandoned the church. And the more masculine a man is, okay, and the more logical he is, unless he is 100% sold out, to Jesus and makes it a point to go to church, it's very hard for him to sit there and get into all the emotion of God, which God has emotion too, but not get into the logic, problem-solving nature of God. But see, this is where I, am reaching out, and I think a lot of other people out here are reaching out to men on the internet and saying, hey, you can change things, you can make things better, and honestly, pick up, your cross. Okay? Pick up your cross and lead these women. Because even if it's done at a small scale, you can still lead them if you're willing to do, the work. Right? Because that's what it really boils down to. There's a part of it where a lot of masculine men, not only have they abandoned the little physical church, but they've also abandoned their responsibility to actually speak to people, whether it's 5 people that they see on a daily basis, or it's 200 or 2,000 people in a church. Even when it comes to helping out in the church, working in the children's ministry, working in the middle school ministry, working in the young adults ministry. All of these are places where people need men, strong men that are going to speak up. All right. And one of the things that I've talked about a couple of times, and I truly believe that a lot of men, if you have found yourself in between churches, like I said, let's be problem solvers. Men are problem solvers, right? So what I would encourage you to do is form little Bible studies, right? Invite other like-minded men around you, to join up in your house. It doesn't have to be a lot of you guys, 4 or 5 people. If you do it, on Sunday, maybe at 11:30, then you guys can hang out and watch football, if you're into football. Or you can play video games, whatever, because I know not everybody likes football. But the whole point here is you can talk over, the information that is in the Bible. And see, again, people don't know that that's really kind of what people did back in the day. And again, you get a glimpse of that in Proverbs 31. Because when you see the Proverbs 31 woman and she's walking around, she's doing all this stuff, it talks about how her husband is chilling at the city gates discussing the information, because that's what they did. They sat around and the men discussed the law of God all the time. All right. So the law of God was always on their lips. Okay. Does this make sense? So they were always talking about it. They were always talking about the goodness of God and what God has done for them. Right. And what he's doing in Revelations. So the point here is don't abandon God. You can abandon these pastors. Okay. But you don't abandon God. And then if you take your money, because you still got to pay tithes some kind of way. So if you can't do anything else, you take your money, you put it together. Okay. And like I say, 2 of you guys can go down to Costco or to Sam's or to Walmart. I really don't care. Buy clothes, buy food, buy medical supplies, take it down, to the homeless camps. I know y'all got homeless camps, no matter what city got them. I was surprised. I went to Raleigh and they had them. I went to Charlotte, they had them. And in Atlanta, we got them everywhere. It's like little mini cities that pop up. And I ain't even gonna lie, I think 2 of you guys should go. And I ain't gonna lie, one of you can actually be packing, because you never know what these people might do. But the bottom line is one person distribute and the other person watch guard. Right? But you make sure that money is spent and you make sure it gets out to God's people and you take care of the poor. Because see, when you turn your back on them, see, that's when God sees you. And he knows that you knew. And that's what the Bible says. He knows that you knew. And so you're not innocent. All right. So I've given you a solution. You don't want to go to church. Fine. You don't want to go to church. Make your own church in your house. Give the money to God anyway. All right. Now let's get back to the point. Once you are leading, because see, that is leading and that is walking in your masculinity. Now, when you're dealing with the women in your life, now she's under your leadership. The world out here for generational black men and women might be a matriarchy, but your house can still be a patriarchy. And if you are leading like Jesus, which means you are selfless in the way that you lead, then she has no reason not to follow you. And I find that a lot of women will follow a man that is walking in his masculinity, that is walking with a selfless heart. A lot of women will follow that man. So at that point, that's one woman out of this emotional masquerade that is happening in so many churches. And it opens the door for more masculine men to become the leaders of these churches. Right? Because how can we really blame the pastors? So, I mean, I see the blame, don't get me wrong. But it's like when you're dealing with this emotion that is in their congregation, that emotion in their congregation does affect them. All right? It's a spiritual power. And like I said, I'm not sure if a lot of you all are going to be honestly there yet to actually take that teaching. But every single person has a spirit energy that is on them and within them. Right? And when you go into big groups of people, all right, even as you get into cities, there is a spirit that sits on the city, a spirit that sits on people. All right? In groups of people especially. So when you are a pastor and you are in that environment, right, where you have all this spiritual energy and it's hitting you, it is going to affect you. But it's also one of the main reasons, more than likely, why they chose that pastor over another pastor. And like what the first guy said, why that church has actually grown in the first place. But remember, like I say, there is a movement. There is a change right now. We're seeing this change happening right now in the body of Christ. So now it's time for masculine men to rise up. All right? And as we rise up, that does not mean that we start to cuss people out and go off on them, because that's really showing you're not walking in your masculinity. When you're downing another person, that's actually feminine. Men solve problems. We're problem solvers. That's what we do. We don't talk about people. That's what women do. That's catty. You know, I mean, you see it a lot, you know, on social media. You know, a girl doesn't like another girl, so she'll post something about that girl. You don't see men doing that about other men that much. And if we do it, we're trying to use it as a point in order to turn away from something. We don't do it out of spite. So you can't be mad at women and all this other kind of stuff. It can't come from that place. It has to come from a place where you're trying to help and edify. And you're trying to actually make, you know, this world a better place. Right? So anyway, I did think a lot of these things are interesting. I'm sure I'm going to be talking more and more about the church as time goes on, because this is now starting to be a big thing. And I think it's a big thing, like I said, primarily because we have, and I kind of hate to say it, we just have too much femininity in the church. I think as long as the femininity and masculinity is balanced, and this is not me, like I said, going against feminine nature or, you know, emotions or anything like that, but it's not balanced. And I've always talked about in my belief system, you know, that I believe that God holds up law and he holds up grace. And God is in the middle. And we associate grace with emotion. That's forgiveness. That's love. That's caring. And then you have the law in the other hand, which we would consider is more logical. It's more masculine. Right? And so if we go too far to logic, you know, we end up in jail. That's exactly what logic does. It puts you in jail. Because nobody feels any kind of ability to be able to express emotion. And then if you go far towards emotion and go far towards grace, now you can just get away with anything. And now it's just all about fun all the time. Where I believe that God is in the middle. All right. And by being in the middle, he's able to love all of his people. And he's able to see them get out of their problems and move over towards a place where their law is in their heart. His law is in their heart, right? So anyway, there's a lot of really great information in that description. If I remember, I'll try to put a link to this particular video in the description. So anyway, please like, please subscribe, and I'm going to see you all in the very next video.